Hi, everyone. My name is Becky Karan Kakula, and I serve as the director of the Disability Equality Index at a global nonprofit organization called Disability In. I'll get into more detail about that shortly, but I want to start off and tell you a little bit about my personal story and how it relates to the work that I do today. I have dwarfism. This means that I stand 4 feet tall as an adult. I'm used to living in a world that really wasn't made for me. I'm constantly having to adapt to the average height world that we live in. But it doesn't stop me from wanting to achieve whatever is in my dream. My parents are both average height. My sister is average height, meaning that they don't have dwarfism. Dwarfism is classified as someone who is 4'10" or shorter. So that means they're taller than that. My parents always wanted me to have a sense of humor, so they joked that my mom wanted 1 kid and my dad wanted 2, so they settled at 1.5. And this allowed me to have a sense of humor that really prepared me for those outside comments that come when I go out into society and people remind me that I'm different. When I was first born, my parents were told that I wasn't going to make it through the night. There really just wasn't enough education or information around having a child with dwarfism, especially if there's no dwarfism history in the family. Fortunately, my parents were able to find the doctors and the support they needed when I was about 6 months. And then from that point forward, they were just going to support me in whatever it is that I wanted to do. And they continue to support me today. I grew up participating in an average height society with my average height peers in activities like soccer, sailing, skiing, swimming. Maybe I participated a little bit differently, but I was still part of the game and part of the sport, and I felt like I belonged. In school, I had a friend who was in my class from preschool to 7th grade, and that really helped prevent any potential bullying. Bullying occurs in most cases with someone like me because people aren't used to seeing people like us. We are made in a short stature body and people are curious. I prefer for people to just ask questions rather than make assumptions. And that allows us to learn and grow together. Once I got to middle school and then high school, things became a little bit more complicated. I actually lost my ability to walk when I was in high school, and I had to go to have surgery where I had 7 pieces of my lower vertebrae removed, and I missed 29 days of school. This was really scary for me because I never wanted to fall behind, and I was falling behind in school because I just couldn't be there due to this medical procedure. I had some tutors come to our house during the time that I was out of school recovering from my surgery, but it still meant that I had to really go down a level in classes going into my next year of high school. And the social circles became more cliquey once I returned from my surgery. A lot of my friends started dating, and they didn't think that I could be around because of my difference. But once we got to our last year in high school, we became more close-knit. I tried not to have any regrets or resentment towards the way that I was feeling the year prior. And we prepared for the next journey, going off to college or university. I applied to 9 colleges, and I chose Providence College in Rhode Island because there was actually a little person on campus. And the reason I say that in a way that it's so important is that there are only 30,000 little people in the United States and a few 100,000 little people around the world. Most people don't see someone like me in their everyday life. So I was proud to see that this community, this college environment, had seen another little person on campus. I chose to be a marketing major. I had several intern experiences related to marketing. And as I got to my final years of college, I started learning about the entertainment and news media industry and how much influence it has on how society treats people like me. I was hooked after a few internships related to a local news station and an advertising agency that works specifically with the entertainment industry. That continued to drive my passion to go work in a city where people who work in the entertainment industry, both in front of and behind the camera, work. And it meant going from Massachusetts, where I grew up, to Los Angeles, California. My parents told me that they could support me to go live out in Los Angeles if I had a job and a place to live. Fortunately, during my college years, I had gotten involved with Little People of America, an organization that supports people with dwarfism and their families. And I met a lot of great friends who happened to live in the Los Angeles area. They invited me to come stay with them. And another friend helped me secure a job with a talent manager so I could really learn the behind the scenes of the entertainment industry that has such an influence on society's portrayals of people like me. Unfortunately, once I got to Los Angeles, my job fell through. But I had a strong network of people who I wanted to learn from, and I was dedicated to figuring out how to stay in Los Angeles and how to get a job. I ended up sending out 1,000 resumes, and I went on 100 interviews over the course of 4 months. Every time I walked in the door in each of those interviews, I was judged based on my appearance. And then I found some temporary placement agencies where they placed someone in a job. So I just had to show up. I went to that job and I did my best. I had about 3 temporary assignments before I was taken seriously and offered a full-time job. And my full-time job started at Creative Artists Agency, the world's largest talent agency and sports agency, representing all types of talent who work across all entertainment and news media industries. This place had a lot of influence. I started out as a temporary employee, and then after 7 months, I was hired full-time. I stayed there for about 5 years, and as I was nearing my 5th year, people started asking me, what is it that you're passionate about? And I said, I'm passionate about changing the way that people like me are portrayed in the media because it affects how people like me are treated in society. If people see us in a negative light, they're going to treat us in a negative way. If they see us in a positive light, they're going to treat us with respect. Most times, it's the negative that they see first. After I spent some time having these conversations, I didn't really say that that was my passion when I first started this job because I really just wanted to prove myself that I could work and that I was capable. But once I gained the credibility and showed that I could work and was capable, I created this platform called Disability in Media, where I share positive stories on Facebook and Twitter about people with disabilities doing things that others may think are impossible. A lot of it relates to sporting events. One may assume that if they acquire a disability later in life that they can't participate in their favorite sports. But that's not true. You can still participate, maybe just in a different way. We all need a sense of belonging. And if more people with disabilities see themselves represented, they feel like they belong. This led to an opportunity to work at a television studio. I took the leap from the talent agency where I worked for 5 years, and then I worked at a television studio for a year, really trying to change the casting process, making sure that more people with disabilities could play themselves. Unfortunately, the statistics are still very low when it comes to disability inclusion in front of the camera in the media. Most people with disabilities are not even able to play themselves. In scripts that have a written role for someone with a disability, there are still people without disabilities playing those roles. There's a lot of talent out there. The decision makers just need to be open to hiring them. After that year experience, I thought, you know what? I need to find a way to get at people quicker and in a different way, since the entertainment industry is very slow when it comes to inclusion of people with disabilities. I decided to take the leap and leave my job at CBS, and I moved all the way back across the country to Boston I had a tough time because it wasn't just that I was giving up the opportunity to live in a cool city. It was that I was giving up the opportunity to work in an industry that I was so passionate about. But they were moving too slow, and life's only so long. I started doing public speaking. I found an essay that I wrote while I was in high school applying to colleges. And it said that I always wanted to be a part-time motivational speaker. I thought, let's just do it. Let's figure out how I can get out there and share my story. Even if I didn't reach a certain level of success in my career, I think it was time for me to start sharing my story and how it is that I adapt to the world that we live in that wasn't made for me, and try to pave the way for those who come after me. A lot of the work that I've done in speaking is going to schools where a student may be transitioning from one school to the next, and they're going to meet a whole new group of people. This student most likely has a physical disability. They're not ready to share their own story and educate people. So I go in and share my story and allow people to ask me questions. I truly don't believe that any question is offensive, and I want people to be curious and ask me questions. I continue to do public speaking to this day, but in addition to that work, I ended up moving to New York City to work for the Actors Union for 3.5 years. And this is a union that represents all on-air talent. And I was specifically in the diversity department advocating for all areas of diversity. It sounded like a glamorous job, and I enjoyed my time there, but I still continue to learn that the entertainment industry is moving way too slow when it comes to disability inclusion. Then I stumbled upon the organization that I work for now, Disability In. At the time, it was called United States Business Leadership Network, but then we made the shift because we really want to be a global organization. And we really want to take ownership of the word disability. We bring corporations together to celebrate the importance of disability inclusion in the workforce. And this is also the first job where I've received a promotion after about a year here. And it was an honor and privilege to get that feeling that I'm finally in a work environment where I feel like I belong. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the work we do at Disability In and how we work with global organizations and some etiquette that can help you be more inclusive of people with disabilities. Disability In is the leading nonprofit resource for disability inclusion worldwide. We empower business to achieve disability inclusion and equality. A lot of you here today may work for companies that we already work with very closely in the US, and we continue to build out our global relationships. We have over 250 corporations who we work with, and they expand opportunities for people with disabilities across the enterprise and across the globe and where they have footprints. We also have 25 affiliates here in the United States, and they raise a collective voice of positive change for people with disabilities. You can learn more by going to disabilityin.org, and you can see all of the wonderful programs we have. The Disability Equality Index is the project that I run. We're actually about to launch a global disability equality index, but currently we're measuring what companies are doing inside of the United States. The questions at disabilityequalityindex.org are publicly available on our website 365 days a year. So for those companies who have global representation, you can certainly take a look at what the questions may look like in the future for global organizations. And it is a benchmarking tool that allows companies to self-assess how they're doing when it comes to disability inclusion across the enterprise. And sometimes it just starts with making sure disability is included in every part of your diversity conversation. When you say you mean inclusion, you mean everyone, list out disability so people with disabilities don't feel left behind. Those companies who score well on this index are named best places to work for disability inclusion. And then companies can use that logo and have a sense of pride for being an inclusive workplace of people with disabilities. Our ultimate goal is to get to a place where the organization no longer needs to exist, and the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is way less than it is now, because it currently is more than twice that of those without disabilities. There are globally 1 billion people with disabilities. That's representing 15% of the world's population. And there's an $8 trillion spending power of people with disabilities. This includes their family and friends, but it's a market that cannot be ignored. Disability defined, the most widely accepted definition is from the United Nations. And it's defined as a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment which, through interaction with various barriers, may hinder full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. 175 companies have ratified the Convention of People with Disabilities. Disability examples include not just physical. There are over 75% of disabilities are non-visible. But those that you may be able to see are physical mobility, blind, low vision, deaf, hard of hearing, intellectual, developmental, speech difficulties, psychiatric, mental illness, those you may not be able to see, learning and attention issues, epilepsy, cancer, diabetes, post-traumatic stress, HIV/AIDS, chronic migraine. These are all considered disabilities. And if you make your workplace more inclusive of people with disabilities that you can't see may be more empowered to share their story. Disability In also has this beautiful global directory where we are profiling over 30 countries, including the United Kingdom, and we are going in deep to share what disability means in those countries and some laws around disability employment and some best practices that you may be able to learn from. I highly recommend you take a look at the disabilityin.org website and look up the global directory. This is a little bit more information on the content that's included in that global directory. Just quickly, some inclusive behaviors that include people with disabilities. Greet a person with a disability the same as you would anyone else. Relax, make eye contact. Call a person by their first name only when extending that familiarity to others. You can use common expressions such as see you later or I'll be running along now. We're okay with it. Ask a person with a speech impediment to repeat themselves if you don't understand what is said. Speak directly to the person with the disability, not their sign language interpreter, personal care attendant, companion, or colleague. Avoid attaching labels. Normal, what is normal? It really has no meaning since we are all different. And treat adults in a manner benefiting adults. Don't assume people with disabilities need help, but offer your assistance, say you're willing to assist, and they can let you know if they need help. Don't judge someone by their ability. They are best to judge their own abilities, and you can't make decisions for them or us. Ask what is needed, from the job application process to the interview process to onboarding to socializing in everyday life. Ask someone if they need an accommodation to feel successful in any of those interactions. We often refer to accommodations as productivity tools. There's a huge return on investment for including people with disabilities in your life and in your workplace. There's strong brand loyalty, there's strong innovation, there's strong retention and performance. Make sure that you support people with disabilities so they feel like they can move up within your organization. Give them the constructive feedback they need because they're willing to stay and do the work. Key takeaways quickly are: think about how you engage with people with disabilities. Choose to be better. Ask questions, don't make assumptions. Utilize disability etiquette guides. Don't get so caught up on the terminology and just find a way to be more inclusive. Lean on organizations like Disability In for disability inclusion, best practices, and support. And engage with the DEI. It'll be a global DEI soon, no matter what your role is. Offer to support your contacts so you get engaged in this work. And most of all, in an environment where you can be anything, be kind. Thank you for being here today. And for anyone who may have questions, you can reach out to me, and I will also be in the speakers forum so I can answer questions there.